Hey everybody, welcome to another episode in the Lens Wizard Lightroom series. And today I want to talk about virtual copies. I want to show you how to make a virtual copy, and then I'm going to give you one example of how I use a virtual copy in my workflow. And I tend to use them towards the end of my workflow is where I use them the most. And I probably use them about 80% of the time. So they're quite important to me. I've been using them since all the way back in version 3 of Lightroom, and that's been many years ago. So let's get right to it. Let's get to the setup. The setup is we're in the library module, and I've picked out this image of Kendall wearing a headdress. She's in the studio, and it's a camera raw file, as you can see right here. So not a whole lot has been done to this, but this is where my workflow would start. I'd start with my camera raw file, and I would let's go to develop module here, keyboard shortcut of D, takes us over to develop, and you can see I did a little bit of adjusting. This is my preliminary adjustments that I would make before I go to Photoshop. Now, after I go to Photoshop, it comes back into Lightroom as a TIFF file. So, okay, I went over to Photoshop, I've edited, I've come back, and you see the image has changed a little bit. I've cropped it in to get rid of the light stand and the softbox. It was off to the side. And now I'm just going to make one more final edit here. I'm just going to kind of crop this in a little bit, just so that we're looking mostly at her face. And let's see, let me get that down, just so we can see the colors and what I'm about to do. So for all intent purposes, let's say that this is my final edit, almost. I want to do some creative stuff with presets, but I don't want to mess up this final edit that I have right here. So what I would then do is go to a virtual copy. So a virtual copy is just going to make a replica of this preview that I'm looking at here with the recipe of whatever I've adjusted over here. As you can see, I've made a few adjustments since I came back from Photoshop. And I'm going to do the keyboard shortcut to actually make a virtual copy. It's Control apostrophe. And if you look up here, the edit TIFF is then going to change over and it says copy 1. And down here I have 1 of 2 and I have 2 of 2. And for all intent purposes, let's do another one. And and now we have 3. And they're all exactly the same. If you look over here and I move through them down here, nothing changes. They're all the same. So let's leave the first one alone, and we'll go to the second one. And I told you I was going to use some presets. So let's go down. I'm going to put this preset on there, and it didn't affect my master, which is over here. It only affected that one right there. And if I go over to number 3 is still unaffected as well. And if I decide I want to put, let's see, I'm going to make it a black and white, and I want to use platinum. So I've made that a black and white, and you can see it definitely changed over here. It's now a black and white treatment, and took away, I don't have the control of vibrance or the control of saturation because it's a black and white. But if I go back over here to this one, I have those. That's on copy 2. And then of course, back at copy 1, we're still the same. Nothing has changed. So that's essentially what a virtual copy is. And you can make a virtual copy. I know I showed you the keyboard shortcut. And if you do your right click, you can go up here and create virtual copy. But I love the keyboard shortcut rather than these fly out menus. Now, with that said, sometimes people still aren't grasping what a virtual copy is. And virtual copy is also falls into the description of our non-destructive workflow, because quite honestly, every one of these views down here in this timeline is a virtual copy. Really, that's where you start. And the way I can easily explain that, let me go over into Photoshop, and I have this diagram right here. And this is a diagram that I use when I'm teaching one-on-one in person or in front of a small group of people, and there's sometimes somebody just doesn't quite grasp, especially beginners, what a virtual copy is. So with that said, let's say these are your images on your hard drive. These are your raw files, right? So this, what Lightroom does is it takes this raw file and it makes a preview of it, puts it down here, okay? So in other words, this image that we're seeing right here is over here. It never opened this image. All it did was look inside and it made a preview of it for us to see. It's kind of like peeking inside the folder and looking what's in there. Now, if I make adjustments to it over here with my sliders, then I'm making adjustments to this preview is all I'm doing. I'm never making any adjustments to this. I'm just making a recipe that is changing this. And if I decide to make a virtual copy of this right here, I'm just going to take whatever this recipe is at right here, and it's then going to make me a virtual copy over here. And if I decide to make another virtual copy over here, anything, whatever this original recipe is, it just keeps duplicating it. And that's essentially what a virtual copy is, but it never touches your file over here. And quite honestly, this is the best way to describe non-destructive workflow to a beginner that doesn't know what it is. So, and that is the core of what Lightroom is all about, is non-destructive workflow. So now if I decide to, okay, say this is the copy that I decide to go with, and I output this as a JPEG, okay, it's going to save it over here on my hard drive or wherever I decide for it to go to. It's going to save the JPEG over here, and I now have a hard copy, but I still have never affected this. And I hope that makes sense. I've explained it to a lot of people this way, and a lot of people do get it when they see this. So that's non-destructive workflow and virtual copies all explained together, if that makes any sense. I hope it does. Okay, so back over here into Lightroom. Virtual copies, keyboard shortcut, Control apostrophe. You also have the fly up. And you can change the label color on them. If you decide you want to put a different label color on it. Anything you do to it, once it's a virtual copy, it doesn't affect this over here. If I wanted to, I could even open this up and I can go edit it. I could decide, if I decide I want to edit it in Photoshop and I hit Control E to take it over to Photoshop, it's going to say, how do you want to edit it? And if I said I want to edit, with Lightroom adjustments, anything I've adjusted over here in Lightroom, it's going to open up a copy of it that way. Anyway, with that said, thanks so much for stopping by. Virtual copies, very, very important to me in my workflow, and I hope you can find a way to incorporate them in yours. Click like if you like the video, click subscribe, come back again and again for free Lightroom tutorials. Have a good day, everybody.